growing up in a state where, 2004, 2005, I was in freshman year of high school while our legislature was actively considering banning same-sex marriage. They're going to listen to the grandparent of a trans kid. They're going to listen to the dad of a student who came out as bisexual, and they're trying to like figure everything out while just being like, my kid's just a kid.
Hello and welcome to the More Than Roommates podcast. I'm Dan, here with my roommate Graham, and we actually have another person on our couch today. We have Brandon Woodard. He is the first openly gay Kansas State Representative. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me over.
Oh, no problem. Well, I appreciate you're like now the top of our guest list for people we've had on the couches. Yeah. But can you tell the viewers and stuff a little bit about your history and how you've gotten to where you're at?
Yeah, so I was basically complaining enough about my representation in the state house, and I think enough of my friends got tired of me complaining about it and said, go do something about it. And so I had already been involved in local politics. I had been volunteering on other people's campaigns, and then was approached by the local Democratic Party saying, hey, this is a seat we think we have a really good chance of winning. I represent a suburban district in Johnson County in the Kansas City area that had been Republican for, I think, 40 years. And I was like, what on earth do you want me to do? And so luckily talking to enough voters, knocking doors, making as many connections as we could in the district, we're very lucky to flip the seat and got elected in 2018. And alongside Representative Susan Ruiz and I were the first openly LGBT members of the legislature, and have been lucky enough to be reelected twice now and am filed for reelection for this November.
That is awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So did you always plan to go into politics?
That's a complicated question. Does anyone plan on going to politics? I don't know.
You weren't in fourth grade, like making declarations and laws?
No, I was involved in student government at KU, and I think that's truly where I got the initial bug, was being in the state house when we were looking at the legislature was considering things like concealed weapons on campus, like school funding for, we had 8 or 9 cuts, I think, at that point. And so we saw tuition go up by so much, where it was in one of those moments where I sat there and realized these are normal people. I mean, not that anyone that runs for office is completely normal, but
is anyone completely normal?
Right? But I was like, these are people that are truly just showing up and doing the job. And so it was one of those moments where I was like, I could see myself doing this. But no, I always swore I would be behind the scenes. I would knock doors for any candidates. I would help anyone for school board or city council or whatever they were running for. And then eventually got mad enough about my representative being one of the most anti-LGBT members of the legislature. And I was like, this is not in line with the district. This is not in line with who I believe our community to be, and stepped up and were lucky enough to win. But no, I mean, I think every single day I still walk in the state house and I'm like, whoa, like every day that I walk in the chamber, I still get butterflies. I'm like, this is so cool that I get to be one of the 6,000 people that have sat in this hall as an elected representative.
And one of the first to be openly gay. And so does that like
openly, yes.
Yes, open. Yeah, right. But does that also like resonate with you, kind of like the history that was made with your election? Has that even sunk in? Yeah.
I think when you're running for office, one of the things that you're hyper focused on is the issues that you know to be important to your district. So food sales tax, school funding, Medicaid expansion, things like that. And meanwhile, every news story that was written about me was about how I was running to be the first openly LGBT member of the legislature, which I knew was this like historic thing that I was carrying alongside me and all the work that people have done before to lay the foundation for those of us that are now ran and won. We did that on the backs of everyone else. But you're running on these issues that are important to the district, and then you get elected and there's a queer kid from Dodge City who reaches out and says, your election gave me the confidence to come out to my family because I feel like someone in my government understands me and knows me and is there to fight for me. Just last week we had equality day at the legislature, and so we had LGBT students from all over the state visiting the Capitol. And when I was in high school, I was I visited during my, U.S. government class, and we got to tour the state house while it was under construction, but I was never up there advocating for issues while these big things were coming before the legislature. And so to see these like young trans kids walking around with flags and these young LGBT folks walking around with pride flags in a legislature that's openly hostile to them and their life is so inspiring and empowering, where I realize in those moments, like, yes, I'm the representative for my district and also a voice for our community more broadly. And so, I don't consider myself the expert on any issue that we focus on in the legislature. But when it comes to standing up for them, that's one of the issues where the Rainbow Caucus, there's now 3 of us part of the LGBT community serving in the House. We, in addition to all the work that we're doing, in addition to our leadership positions on committees, we're also the voice for this broader community throughout the state.
Wow. Now, was it always your plan to run while being openly gay, or was that something that was discussed later?
Well, I'm me, so I think it's pretty obvious. And if not, people quickly realize that, I'm not straight. But no, I mean, I told when I was being recruited to run for office by some national organizations, by local folks in the community. In fact, all of the moms in my district that I tried to recruit to run for the seat turned around and had an intervention with me to say, no, we want you to run. And, one of the things that I was like, one of the firsts that we have to consider is that this is going to be part of the narrative, right? Again, I was focused on the issues important to the district, and yet every news story was about my sexual orientation. And I think in the same way that people of color, obviously LGBT folks, women have to continue to come out over and over again, right? We have our visible identities, but we also have those things that through our lived experiences that we aren't as visible. But, going door to door, it never really came up as a negative. Like, people were like, oh, you'd be the first LGBT lawmaker. That's awesome. Or folks that are like, well, I don't agree with your lifestyle, but, I definitely am with you on sales tax or whatever. It's like, it's not a lifestyle. It's truly who I am. Right. But I think using that as the opportunity to be unapologetically myself, I promised everyone they were getting me with no filter, which they've gotten on social media and Twitter. And I don't hold back. Literally today, I called someone asshole based on how they were reaching out to me, and that's not positive advocacy. But I told everyone that if you're going to recruit me to run for this, you're getting the real me, and that includes every part of who I am.
That's really cool. Yeah, especially like we're pretty close in age. Like, I don't know, I feel like
I'm 33.
Growing up, yeah, same. Growing up, like, we were told to basically hide. You know what I mean? Like, don't be yourself. Like, yeah. I don't know. Did you ever have any internal conflict with that, or have you always been pretty unapologetically you?
I've been pretty unapologetically me, I think. Growing up in Topeka, growing up in a state where, 2004, 2005, I was in freshman year of high school, while our legislature, which is a body I'm very lucky to be part of now, was actively considering banning same-sex marriage. And so at the same time that I was figuring out who I was and coming to terms with the real me, I also had my state government in this place that I loved telling me that, like, people like me shouldn't have the same rights as everyone else. And so, I never thought I would run for office, but I've always kept kind of an eye on what's going on. But no, everyone's getting the real me. They're getting the real deal. Again, I don't have filters. I try not to drop too many F-bombs like when we're legislating, but no, I've always truly just been like, you're getting what you get, and if you don't like what's being sold, then you have someone else to vote for.
Cool. So the fire has been lit.
So do you think that helped or hurt your campaign in any way, or was neutral?
I would say anyone that cares about someone's sexual orientation or gender identity in a person running for political office to make decisions on behalf of their community, if they have an issue with someone who they love or who they are, one, that's on them. Two, they've already decided who they're voting for. And so, I think more than anything, I think being different, having a different lived experience only helped me in the race, because I was able to say, this is a voice that's missing in the legislature. This is a perspective that's not there. It also helped that being a seat that we thought we could win, that was a vulnerable Republican seat, getting national attention. LGBTQ Victory Fund is a super PAC that works to get openly LGBT candidates elected. We were very lucky. I mean, there's a lot of coordination laws, so I wasn't allowed to talk to them. But seeing after the fact that they spent over $35,000 on the race in digital ads and mail clearly paid off, because we flipped a seat that had been Republican for such a long time. On the one hand, no one's reading the paid for by on their mail, right? They saw a picture of me talking about food sales tax and not that it was paid for by LGBTQ Victory Fund. But I think for anyone that cared about that, they were already decided in the election. And for everyone else, I think being a unique perspective often helps you be more unique and get have a better opportunity to get your voice heard in the state legislature. And so I think for so many people in my district, which is one of the youngest districts in the state, it has the most renters in the state, it's already incredibly LGBT friendly. So there were a couple of folks that were just like, I'm not with you on this, but they're Kansas nice enough to say, hey, I'm not voting for you, which is helpful information for me, because then I don't have to go back to their door and make sure that they're turning out to vote.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And so now that you've been in the Capitol and working with these people, or working, opposed to these people, what is it like having to go to these rooms with people that are trying to put in laws that kind of are against LGBTQ people and our lifestyle?
Yeah. So you have to be an effective lawmaker, you have to be very good at compartmentalizing. I'm never going to compromise the values that I have. I'm never going to not fight for the community. And also, I owe it to my district to fight as hard as I can when we need to stop bad policy, while also being able to work with anyone. My first term, I sat in front of the person who probably has on paper the most anti-LGBT voting record. I don't know if that was a troll putting me and Susan and right in the robe in front of him and he had to sit by us. But there was a day that we had voted on, I think, 37 bills, and I think we were 12 or 13 in a row. And the representative sitting behind me voted no on everything. So I just turned around and I was like, Representative, does your yes button even work? Can you just test it? And he thought it was the funniest thing ever, which tells you how dry the humor is in that building. But from there, we were able to start talking about different issues. And fast forward a year later, he was one of the lead Republican negotiators on a different bill with medical marijuana. And so I think that we can be ineffective by allowing every single vote to impact our mental health or step away. I think on those tough days, I have to take some time to myself. I go walk around the building. I call friends or family or loved ones, or I'll come home sometimes early, just to kind of reframe my mind. But there was a bill a year or two ago that would have banned trans athletes, trans women from competing with their female athletes. And we went from losing that vote overwhelmingly on the floor to having the two main proponents, the supporters of the bill, being my chair and vice chair of a committee that I was the ranking member on. So I could have packed up my toys and gone home, but instead I went from that, realized that we lost, realized that I had to pick myself back up to fight another day, and walk straight into a negotiation for a higher education budget deal, which then we won. And so, I could spend my time dwelling on being frustrated about the one or two votes that don't go the way that I wish that they would, and pack up my toys and go home and not focus on anything else and be an ineffective lawmaker. But I think the reason I've built respect in that building is that I can win or lose and still have a conversation with them about any other issue. I can still adamantly oppose their stance on our basic human rights, while still owing it to my district to fight like hell to get everything that I possibly can done for them.
So do you have a moment that you're particularly proud of something that you've accomplished on your campaign trail or making laws and voting? And
I think you have these preconceived notions when you get to the legislature, right? Every time we get sworn in, it's 125 members of the House, and the only thing that we have guaranteed is the 2 years that we are elected to serve there. And so you come in with these ideas of these people that you've read about what they've said on the rhetoric that they've used on the campaign trail, the things that they've said in political ads or mail, and oftentimes think that that's their entire personality. I'm sure half the people that follow me on Twitter think I'm an asshole, because I'm like, I won't put up with people's stuff. If you're going to be a bigot, I'm going to call you a bigot. If you're going to lie about my voting record, I'm going to call you out because I have the platform to do so. But for a lot of these folks, I think some of the prouder moments that I've realized is that if you don't make everything personal, when possible, and if you are focused on understanding where they're coming from, more than anything, the people in that building just don't understand what the issue is that's coming before them. And so, last year there was a bill on that would have banned gender affirming healthcare for minors, and we needed 3 Republicans to vote no. I knew we had 5 or 6, but it was the relationships that we had built with our colleagues. It was the relationships that our advocates had built, listening to folks, hearing them out and hearing their concerns and seeing if there was a way we could address it. We needed 3 Republicans to vote with us, and I think we had 14 or 15. Wow. And that's truly just from building relationships with people who, if they're not going to listen to us, they're going to listen to someone else on their side. They're going to listen to the grandparent of a trans kid. They're going to listen to the dad of a student who came out as bisexual, and they're trying to figure everything out while just being like, my kid's just a kid. They're just trying to live life. It's already tough enough. Right. And I think those are the moments where you sit back and you're like, whoa, the conversations I had in this building matter so much. Whenever, we were in DC a couple of months ago and got to hear the story of U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin, and where she was in the members only elevator when Marco Rubio was getting on the elevator and was asked by a reporter his thoughts on the marriage equality bill that was going through, that ultimately went through the federal government. And he said it was a waste of time. After saying that, he's on the elevator with the only LGBT member of the United States Senate on the elevator and the door shut.
Karma.
We will never know what those conversations were like. Yeah. But every day that I'm in the State House, I'm having conversations one-on-one with people behind closed doors and making them realize that it's no longer, and I think that's the important part in the lesson of this, is they're no longer voting against these people they don't understand. They're voting against people that they serve with. And I get the same vote that they get. And so being able to have those conversations, I think, are really powerful ways for us to change. It sounds cliche to say change hearts and minds, but that's truly what we're doing.
And I think that kind of sums it up as a whole, as why it's important to have representation for these minority groups in the State House when they're making these laws. You need someone that has backgrounds of different viewpoints, so you could be like, you might not have even thought of it this way, but I'm a human too, Right. No, but stuff like that. So that's so interesting.
Have you had to deal with any insane people that are very off the chart, one direction or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I really realized very quickly, being raised Christian, is I was actually raised reading a book that these people cite and claim that they know, yet it's very clear they'd never read, or at least if they read it, they didn't comprehend it. So they weren't reading the Bible I was raised reading. And I think more than anything, I've realized that so much of political work that we do, much more at the federal level, but even at the state level, is so much theater. And we get elected to represent our districts, not to be right-wing crazy people with these talking points, right? I truly, even just watching the news today, this afternoon, the media's obsession with Taylor Swift and her role on the Super Bowl outcome. What on earth are you people talking about? Yeah. This is a sport where she is dating someone who is a truly pro athlete who's very good at what they do, right? So I think, there are times where people say crazy stuff. I don't think anyone's ever prepared to get death threats or comments online that are so hateful and mean. But that's the day and age we live in, is people are so brave behind a keyboard and behind their anonymous profiles. And to quote Taylor Swift, these dads, Brads, and Chads, just with all their free time to come after people who are truly just doing the work. But at the end of the day, I get more stuff passed than the extremists do. I've stopped more bad policy than they've ever gotten close to getting accomplished. And so, they're in the super majority. I'm in the super minority. I have to go find 23 friends every time I want to pass a bill. And I'm better at my job than they are. So at the end of the day, they can be as crazy as they want. The people of their districts, I've watched a number of people who focus on one or two issues. And it's always pretty satisfying watching them get thrown out of their office by their districts, because even if they're representing the views of their district, Kansans are not crazy and they don't like crazy. So
that's reassuring.
Yeah, our state's had a history of throwing people out of office that are crazy.
Yeah.
So do you have future plans in politics? You gonna make it all the way to the White House?
No, we'll save that for somebody else. But no, I'm excited to be running for re-election. I'm running for my 4th term. I've served in the leadership team in the House before. I'm interested in considering another leadership role in the future. But right now, truly, this district is so cool to represent. I'm learning so much. I'm so well represented in the state Senate and Congress, and for as long as, they say never to say never, but I'm truly focused on doing the work right now in my district in the office that I hold.
Now, do you have any words of wisdom for maybe a LGBTQ plus young person, child watching this that may have an interest in politics? Is there some words of wisdom that you could give them?
Yeah, I would say one of my biggest pet peeves is people talking about young people and saying, you're the next generation, right? If you already have a phone and you have access to the internet, and if you have permission from your parents to go volunteer on a campaign, so many races, I think 5 or 6 races in the legislature alone were decided by 150 votes or less. That's a weekend of knocking doors and making phone calls. And so anyone that wants to get involved can truly make a difference right now in the outcome of a race that is going to represent them. If they are in a district where they're in western Kansas and it's truly so Republican that they couldn't win, adopt a district somewhere else. There's tons of swing districts that people can get involved in. And I think one of the easiest ways to get involved in campaigns, because that's how I ended up in this world, was truly just like stuffing envelopes for donation letters and sitting down with the candidate and trying to help with their social media. There's so many ways you can be involved on the campaign side, but for anyone thinking about considering running for office, reach out to the people that represent you. Have coffee with your city council member. Have coffee with your member of your school board, right? I co-sponsored a bill this year that would change the lower the voting age to 16. We have consumers that are part of our systems and our school systems and are working oftentimes and paying, their first couple of years of income taxes, and yet they have no sort of representation because they can't vote. So we could change that, right? But if that's not going to go through, then using your voice for good, making sure that, I would say more than anything, make sure your elected officials know who you are, what you care about, where you live, so they can make sure you're constituent, and what issues are important to you. And I think doing that, even just today, we had a Young Professionals Day in the State House, and they, when we have these local young leaders in our chambers of commerce or in their high school clubs or student governments at their universities coming into the building, that's how I got my insight into this, to realize, wait, these are normal-ish people, and I could do this one day. So don't wait for your turn to run. It's your time now. If it's not running yourself to put your name on the ballot, you can influence the outcome of someone else's election.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming down to our basement, chilling with us, being a part of the roommates. Yeah, Pepper's like knocked out right now.
She's all the way out.
She was
snoring.
Is there, you have a website? Do you want to plug that so if people have more questions or want to know more about you?
Yeah, it's Woodard for Kansas or Brandon for Kansas. Last name's Woodard for Kansas.com. It's got ways to get involved in the campaign, information about me, donation link, all that sort of stuff. So if people want to get involved in my campaign or any others, I would be happy to connect folks, regardless of where they're at in the state.
Cool.
Is there anything else? Any last minute piece or anything you want to say? Is it good? Okay. Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate it. And guys, thank you for listening.